So if you're in Illustrator, and remember we're sharing our computers, so a lot of people like to move around palettes, make it difficult to find things. How many of you had some difficulty finding something at some point? It's a common thing. When you're learning, that's 90% of the fun is just finding where things are and what they do. But if somebody's particularly left their workspace in a big mess, here's how to clean it up. Here's how to reset your workspace. You can go to Window, down to Workspace, and right now we're working in the essentials. This is just kind of the basic tools that are always being used. Whoop. Do Reset Essentials, and this is going to put all of your palettes back into place. Now right now they're in collapsed mode, so you can see here's my palettes over here, and they've got just one little single icon. If you click the little arrow, this will expand it out, and now you can see the palettes that you're working on. Same way for the tools. I like to have those as a double-sided tool and moved around from there. If you need to find a palette, remember you can go to the Window drop-down menu, and here's every palette that should be open. So if you, for instance, today I'm going to be using the Pathfinder palette. It doesn't have a checkbox, which means it's not open, so if I click on it, there's my Pathfinder. It'll open up, and I can now use this one. If I wanted to dock it, I can drag it over here and dock it to there. Whoops, looks like I just pulled the transform. Let's put that back up there. Whole thing, there we go. Down to there, now I can reuse that. Just that simple to get your workspace back in order when working with that one. For this project, this is kind of the end result that we're looking for. Remember, the book is only going to go over those first 3 little objects. I want you to do the rest of the icons that come with this particular project. So even though you're doing the first 3 in the book, see what you can do to do the rest of these as well. And we'll talk about what's the appropriate tools to use when making them. Last time we talked about simply making objects or making little shapes, quick ways of doing that, and also how to evenly distribute them or to place them on there in a specific place. And the book goes into a lot more detail. Let me show you one more thing, because I answered this question for a couple of people when I came in. How do you find things that are on here? So let's say you've got a folder with your name on it. Everybody should have a folder or at least a jump drive that you save things to. That's the easiest way to find things, because you know they all should be in there. As you can see, people are starting to save a lot of stuff to my desktop, and so it gets a little confusing, especially if you've got a lot of things going on. But if I was in Illustrator and I wanted to place a picture, so File and Place, I know my symbols are saved in a folder called Symbols, and I know specifically that it's inside of my folder. But let's say I forgot where I saved it, or I don't know where I downloaded it to, or I just don't know where to find something. Here's how to find something specifically for using the Macintosh. First of all, you can choose some quick folders over here. So if you have your jump drive, it would be showing up on this right-hand side. If you've got, here's access to your desktop, and you can see there's my folder and all the other folders that are on the desktop inside of here. If you need to search for something, use this top right-hand corner. So if I did a search for symbols and hit return, this is going to search my Macintosh or just whatever folder that I had, for specifically the desktop. And for anything that has the word symbols in the name, or if it has symbols inside of it. So for instance, this is a PDF. It doesn't have the word symbol in the name, but it probably has the word symbol somewhere inside of that document. Does that make sense? And so it does search for that. If I wanted to find the name of it, let's say I want to start typing symbols, it gives me an option to choose match for file names to be symbols. Now everything that's called out is for here. Here's the second thing to pay attention to. If you click once, I can see the word symbols. Down here at the bottom, this shows me where things are saved to. So here's my desktop, here's my folder, here's the symbols folder. This is probably the folder that I want. However, if I click, say, on this one, you can see this goes into another folder that may be somebody else's, or maybe even something that I don't even need. So this is a great simple way of finding your files if you don't know how to, if you don't know where they are saved to. Did I lose everybody? All cool? Cool. Awesome. So if I wanted to, let's see, I like that one, double click it. Here's another simple little trick to know. If you want to know what it looks like, if you want to get a little preview, I'll even back up. Let's say I wanted to get a preview of, I'll even go back, what these class notes look like. I can kind of see what a picture looks like, but if I click on class notes and hit my space bar, this will give me a pop-up preview of what it looks like. In this case, it's a PDF, and I can even scroll through the PDF. If I want to know what a picture looks like, get it larger, hit the space bar, and it'll give me a preview of what it looks like before I open it up from there. All cool? All right, well, I'll hit cancel. Actually, let's go ahead and place one of these on here. Where's my biohazard? First one. Nope, not the biohazard. Radiation. That's the one that I want. I want to hit template so it'll make it on its own little layer. Remember, the layers palette is one of the more important ones you always want to have open. And you can see when I did the template, it put that radiation on its own little layer that's locked down, meaning I can't select it at all. So here's the next little thing that we're going to work with. I'm going to open up my shapes. Let's drag out a couple of shapes. Oops, make sure I'm working on layer 1. Notice that I can't even make a shape on this layer. I'm going to select layer 1 to work on. Now I can click and drag. Let's get a red one. Let's make a couple of different things. Oops. Green circle and blue polygon. If you didn't know this, here's kind of a quick little nice trick. Notice how many sides does my polygon have? 5 sides. If I wanted to quickly add or remove a side, I'm still holding down my mouse, hit the up and down arrow. If I hit my up arrow, you can see it'll quickly add sides to what I'm working with. Down arrow will do the exact opposite. So if I needed just a triangle, using the polygon tool to do that. So I've got 3 different shapes that I'm working with. Oftentimes in Illustrator, you're going to be making objects, you're going to be making art that's made up of different shapes. And a lot of times you'll want each one of these shapes to kind of move together. So if I was, for instance, making a face out of this one and I wanted to, let's make some quick eyes and maybe a nose or something. Oh, let's make it something we can see. There we go. So if I wanted all of these to move together, well, what's a quick way I can select all of these objects?
Selection, you make a marquee.
There you go. I can use my selection tool, click and drag over it, make my marquee. What's another way? Without clicking and dragging, I can make multiple selections. Did y'all figure that one out? There you go, Shift key. If you hold down your Shift key, you can add on to selections. So Shift and click on each one of those will also select all of them and move them at the same time. But let's say I wanted to, in one click, move all of these at the same time. I want this to be one object rather than having to click and drag and reselect everything. Sometimes that gets annoying. Huh? Say again? Group them. Bingo, you know where I'm headed. If you select all of your objects, go up to Object, down to Group, Command G. This will group everything together and treat it all as one object. Check out our layers palette. So in layer 1, I've obviously got, there's my path for my square and triangle, but I've got a group layer. All of these have been put together in one solid group, the 3 different triangles and the circle. So grouping objects is a great way of quickly selecting and keeping everything together. Even if I made copies of things, I can do copy and paste. It'll copy and paste the entire group and keep everything grouped together as well. You can make groups of groups. So if I selected that one, and I selected all of these and grouped it, you can see now there is a group inside of a group inside of a group. Very meta, right? To ungroup things, if I needed to break them apart, it's simply a matter of Object and Ungroup. So notice that Command G is to group, Shift Command G is to ungroup. A lot of times in these keyboard shortcuts, the Shift key is kind of the to undo something. So that ungroups that one. I can now select it. And let's even ungroup that object. So now that's all together as well. The second thing is if you need to lock down something. And this one tends to be a little more tricky if you don't know what you're doing with it. If I didn't want to move this object at all, I want it to be exactly the same. First of all, in my Layers palette, I've got it open. I can click right next to the eyeball, and that'll give me my lock icon. And now I've got it locked down, meaning I can't select it, I can't make any edits to it. Another quick way of doing it is to select your object, and under Object, here's Lock, choose Selection, Command 2. So whatever is selected is now automatically locked down as well. Just as you can ungroup, you can unlock things, but you can't do it one at a time, at least not quickly. If I do Object and Unlock All, that will unlock what I've got from there. Check out the keyboard shortcut for unlock all. What's that? What is that key? It's not the shift. What do you think it is? Option. That's the option key for using that one. So option command 2 to ungroup things for that. All right, so we'll move on working with that. That's grouping, that's moving things together. I think for the little snowflake icon, you'll be grouping objects and rotating them in order for working on that. Let's bring those back. The next thing, and this one's a really, really fun thing to play around with, especially if you're making logos or you want to combine two or more shapes. And this is the Pathfinder. I want to drag our Pathfinder back out here. Pathfinder gives you the ability to take two or more objects, and especially if you stack them together, you can combine their two intersections. By the way, if you want to see just the outlines, you don't care about the fill colors, you can go to View, Outline, and this kind of goes into outline mode. All you're seeing is just the vector lines. For me, it tends to get a little bit complicated, so I usually keep it under Preview. But with those two selected, under the Pathfinder, you get kind of a preview of what you're doing with it. So in this case, the first one, Unite, it's going to merge these two together to create an object that looks like this. So now that's one particular object that you're working with. If I undo it, this one will subtract out the first one. The other one will get the combination of those two. You get the idea? Very, very simple. It's a great way of making some complex shapes very, very quickly. It does tend to get a little bit more complicated. Let's say I threw in this third one, and I did that one. Well, obviously it's going to subtract the first one that's on top from there. Let's try this one. Oh boy. See? Very, very unique, but that would be difficult to draw if you're using the pencil tool or the pen tool. The second thing to remember about the Pathfinder are these Pathfinders down here. If I was to choose one of these, let's select all of them, and click this one, it looks like nothing happened. And as a matter of fact, if I click on it, they're all grouped together. But what I need to do is to ungroup them. So Object and Ungroup. In this case, it found every intersection and it split it apart as if it was like a cookie cutter. So now when I click and drag, oops, let's ungroup it again. Sometimes you may have to ungroup several times. There we go. Now I can click and split each one of these apart, and they're their own separate little shapes. And that's how logos are made. Just that simple, right? How many of you have seen a logo that looks something like that? It's almost like two or more objects have been split together. This is a great, easy, simple way of being able to do that once they're created. And that's through the Pathfinder tool as well. The second tool that they're going to have you use is the pencil tool. Now I just want to show you some things to think about when using this tool. The pencil tool allows you to draw free-form shapes, and it looks like a pencil. If you click and hold, there's also a smooth and an erase path. I'll get into those in just a second. Let's choose a outline that we can see once we start drawing. And with this one, you simply click and drag, and you get a little dotted line that follows wherever your path is. When I let go, it draws that line. So this is a great simple way of drawing some very complex shapes, especially if they're not geometric. One thing to know, notice that when I started it and stopped it, you get just that line. It's an opened line, meaning that it's not connected from the starting point to the ending point. If I was to draw another line, this time I'm going to hold down my Option key. What happens to my cursor? See what's changing? You get a little circle. If with my Option key held down, if I let go now, it's going to automatically connect it back to here. So the Option key will close off your path, whatever your starting point and ending point is. And this is great if you're trying to draw something and you want it to be automatically closed off for one particular object. Option key, oops. Click first, then get your Option key. And now Option, and go down from there. When using the pen tool, or excuse me, the pencil tool, there are some options that are associated with this. I'm going to double click on the icon. Usually when you click on an icon, this will bring up whatever options that tool has. In this case, you got your pencil tool. The fidelity and the smoothness, this has to do with the quality of line that you have. Right now I've got it really, really small, meaning whenever I draw, it's going to be very close to whatever my original drawing is. So if I've got very rough lines, it'll be pretty rough. It won't be too smooth. Let's bump this up to high fidelity, high smoothness within these tolerances. Now if I try to draw the same thing, you can see it becomes a lot smoother. If I was even to zoom in, there's fewer points along this line. I know it can be difficult to see versus this line. See how many points are on this one? That's because it wasn't as smooth. It's trying to track it a lot better. How many of y'all read comics like Dilbert or something like that? Dilbert's an awesome comic. Dilbert is drawn in Adobe Illustrator. And I remember Scott Adams, he was talking about how he sets up his pencil to be a very smooth line. He has just that certain style. But even with this one, you can saw when I drew it off real quick, very, very smooth different lines. Let's delete these and get those out of the way. The second thing to know is keeping it selected and filling in with new strokes. If you got it filled in, if you do have a fill selected, it'll fill it in. I'm going to just uncheck that. But keeping it selected and editing it. I'm going to zoom in so we can work with this one. If I draw a line and I stop and then I start drawing another line, it's going to create a new line. Notice that it breaks and started from there. But if I start my line very, very close to it, watch my X disappear. See how it disappeared when I got close to it? Now when I click and drag, it's going to continue with that line. So if you need to keep drawing a line, simply start off where you last stopped and it will add on to your last line. If you move away too far, it's going to start a new line from there. That's kind of a little tip to know about. Also, if I start pulling forward, it's going to add on to it. But watch what happens if I back up a little bit and then start pulling forward. It erased it away. So if you're drawing and like, uh-oh, it erased away my line. Why did it do that? It's usually because you're backing up over it. You're essentially telling it, get rid of this line, and then we'll start a new line. So if you do want to start pulling forward to add on to that one as well. Did I lose everybody? All cool for that. For me personally, I like to keep the fidelity and the tolerance pretty low. That way I get exactly the line that I want. And then I can go back in and smooth it out using these tools. Using the smooth path tool. See how kind of bumpy that is? I can go over this one and kind of reformat it to be exactly where I want it to go. If I want to erase it, here's my erase path tool. Simply go over that one. I can erase away those lines as well. Simple, simple stuff. When I first started learning Illustrator, they didn't have these tools. It was very difficult to freeform draw lines. The pen tool, which is what we'll use next project, was pretty much all that you had, and that was kind of a monster to have to learn. I'm glad I learned it though. So in your project, you'll be recreating these different types of shapes. So I'm going to do this one for you really, really quickly. And I'm just going to kind of do it my way. Obviously, this is a circle. Okay, so when you're thinking about these, think about how do you break everything down into what it needs, and how can you use the Pathfinder or the different shapes to create what you want. So if I was creating this, I would make a circle, and the circle is being divided up into specific little quadrants. In the book, it's going to ask you to use a line tool. So in this case, I'm even going to change my line to red so we can see it. I'm going to draw a line going straight down the middle. We'll make it thick so we can see that as well. If you need to rotate something by a specific number of degrees, first of all, I'm going to select my line. Remember, you can go to Object and do a transformation. In our case, we're going to rotate it. And this will give me the ability to type in a specific amount of rotation. Remember, you check off your preview so you can see what it'll look like, and I'll make a copy of it. And if I need to do it again, I can go to Object, Transform again, and it'll do the same thing again from there. So if I was to select these, and I wanted to split it up as if I was splitting up a pie, this one would be a great one to use. So divide it up, and Object, we're going to ungroup it. So now I've got each one ungrouped all by itself. What do you notice about I'm going to undo all this. What do I have wrong on here? Not centered. Yes, good. You're developing your eye. If I need this to be centered up, I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to select everything. You got it selected. Up here at the top, here's my alignment things that we're working with. Remember, we use the alignment to line up and space out each one of your boxes. This one's going to center everything horizontally, and we'll get this one to center everything vertically. Now check it out. Now it's nice and perfect. We'll get that one, and we'll ungroup what we got here. And I can erase away each one of those quadrants to work with that. Of course, if I need it to be perfect, I can rotate it, placing it into here. Same way for this center portion. If I wanted a circle to be cut out of that part, select them. Oops. Oh, there we go. If there's nothing to be cut, yeah, obviously nothing's going to intersect with it. Let's keep using this one. We'll ungroup that one. Sometimes it'll give you results that you don't even know what you're looking for. But that's one quick way of adding that on into there. Any questions on that? I know I didn't do it exactly the way the book did, but this is kind of developing your eye to be able to create each of these. Let's look at each of the icons and see how would you solve this problem. So obviously we did the where is it? Radiation together. I use the circle tools. I use the lines to be able to cut it out. What about the biohazard? What shapes would you think would be best to work with this one? Circles, lots of circles, because you'd want to be able to make those nice curves. What about the colds, if you haven't done it already? Definitely lines, lots of lines. What about this one? A little bit of both. You've got circles. You know how to cut circles now. You know how to draw some straight lines, even a little head circle up there. I saw a documentary where they're trying to recreate the wheelchair access, the disabled icon now. It looks more sporty, like the guy's leaning forward and he's like racing. I'll have to find an example of that. What about this one? This is really complex. Okay, lines. I definitely see the circles for creating this one. Anybody else? Would you want to use the pencil tool? I think the pencil tool would be great, especially for tracing this off. It is pretty good straight lines, but the pencil tool will be able to draw off these areas a lot quicker. Fire one, this one's covered in your book. This one will make you use the pencil tool. What about the magnet? Pencil?
Do like a rectangle and a circle.
You could. You can get the rectangle to make that and circle that off, cut them, that type of thing. This one's an easy one. Yeah, definitely the lines, definitely the circle for creating that one. What about the skull? Yeah, pen tool, pencil tool to draw that one off. And this guy.
Rectangle.
Lots of rectangles on that guy. Even lines to draw that one off. You use your discretion. If you have any questions on how I would do it or any even any tips that you run into, let me know and I'll help you out from there. I'm going to give you the rest of the time to work on this. I am going to play music. If this bothers anybody, just let me know and I'll be sure to turn it down.